Good evening everyone, and welcome back once again to First Cast. Now the fishing for the past few weeks has actually been pretty dreadful. I think I've had about 4 blank sessions in a row now, and I don't really want a 5th one if I can possibly help it. So I've come to one of the local lakes today in the evening time in the hope of breaking the blank streak. And you might notice I've got 2 different rods with me today. The one on the right hand side is the same one I always use, the bigger one, but the one on the left hand side is this little tiny 4-foot one. And this is a new one to my collection, which there's a bit of a story behind that, and I'm going to get into that later on in the video if I can catch a fish on it. But the methods I'm using today, on the left hand side I've got the usual stick float waggler setup, which is perfect for those smaller lightweight rods and setups. And then on the right hand side I have a paternoster rig with a size 8 hook, I believe, on the end of that one there. Now I have some leftover worms from the weekend, my last blank session. So I have basically half a tub of worms tonight that I really need used up. So the plan is to use just worms tonight and see if we can get smaller fish like your roach, maybe your perch. There's also pike in the lake as well, but I'm not specifically targeting them tonight. But any one of those smaller silverfish would be fantastic. And I can already see a few rises and a few activity, or a bit of activity in the front of me here. So there's clearly plenty of bait fish around here. I'm very keen to get casting out here and get stuck in. So this intro has gone on quite long enough. Say it with me now. Enough talk, let's fish. All right, so we're going to start with one of the smaller worms in the tub. Now normally if I'm fishing for roach or rudd, I would try and just use maybe half a worm, but because I don't actually know what's in front of me here at the minute, I suspect it is the smaller fish like the roach and the rudd, but there's also a chance of perch as well. So what I'm going to do just for the first cast is keep the full worm on the hook, and then if I get bites but there's nothing taking the hook, then I'll know that it's a smaller fish there. But I'll start off with a big worm first of all, basically to create a big profile in the water, get some scent moving around as well, and then just see what happens to this float here if we can keep an eye on it for a second or two. All right, first cast of the day. I've seen a few rises in this general area in front of me, so I'll just do a fairly short cast. I'm just going to watch that float for a few minutes there just to see if there's any activity. And what I'll do is I'll keep an eye on that and then just get the other rod rigged up as well, the paternoster. And I'll be able to do a much longer cast with this one here. There's a cormorant floating around there somewhere, so there's clearly fish in the area if they're about. All right, same again. We're gonna go for the big worm on the bigger hook and get a good deep cast with this one here. Lovely evening on the lake. And what I'll do is I'll give it a few minutes here, and then if there's nothing happening, I'll just move further down the lake this direction here and just cover as much ground as I can this evening, just before the light fades. We might get a really nice sunset over there in the distance this evening, all being well. Just got a bite in the float. Yep. Yep, one on. One on. Just gonna swing it up here if I can. Yeah. And that is our target species of a little roach. Oops. On the worms with the waggler float setup. Brilliant. We'll get the hook out and get that one back ASAP. I was in the middle of setting up the other rod for lure fishing there. I was about to give up on the float. So, there we go, hook's out. And we're going to do another cast in that area because roach are shoaling fish. So what we're going to do is let this one go and then cast in that area again and see if we can get some more. Back our roach goes. New species for the channel, new method, absolutely great start to the session. Alright, I'm just going to talk you through the change that I made that resulted in me catching that last fish. So as I said at the very start, I was starting out with the full worm on the hook just to see if I could get any attention from the bigger fish, but there was nothing happening whatsoever. So all I done, once that worm was on the hook, I basically cut it in half. So it's a lot smaller. It's only half the size. It's a lot more presentable to those roach that have smaller mouths. And it just means that whenever they go to inspect it, there's a much better chance of them actually having a go at it. So let's go again, same spot as before, and see if there's any more of those roach down there. But there we go, that's the blank streak broken now. I really didn't want to have 5 in a row, so thankfully, thanks to that little roach tonight, that's me back in the game. And what a beautiful evening to get stuck back in again. So I suppose I should tell the story of this tiny rod tonight as I'm walking towards this beautiful red sunset in the distance there. So this is a new rod to my collection, but it's actually one I found, believe it or not. I was on holiday in Scotland last weekend and I was desperately trying to get an episode of First Cast filmed in Scotland doing some sea fishing. But unfortunately, as I was saying, the fishing has been really poor, not just in Scotland, but over here as well. And it's just not been happening. However, as I was on the rocks and clambering and scrambling along the coastal areas, I came across this little rod that was just wedged in between 2 rocks. Now it had one of the really cheap reels on it, and it is a cheap rod to be fair. It's one of the real rubbish plastic ones you would get from the supermarket. And it had this really terrible reel on it, and the line on the reel was all tangled up around the reel and up around the rod. And as I said, it was just wedged into the rocks. So it gave me the impression that somebody basically just rage quit fishing for the day and chucked the rod away. So I kind of kept an eye on it for a day or two. I asked around me, nobody had seen anybody throw it away or come back for it. And after about a couple of days of going back and seeing this rod, I decided to take it home with me. I untangled all the line, put a new reel on, and it's caught me a fish this evening. So yeah, the lesson is, I suppose, don't throw your stuff away, or somebody like me will find it and catch fish with it. Or if you do throw it away, obviously try and do it responsibly. But there we go, that's a brand new rod, probably one of the real cheap ones you get in the supermarket. Only about 4 foot long, but it's doing the job tonight, so I'm not complaining. Or is that one more for the day, just before I go home, just before we lose the light? Yep, one more. And we have that could be a rudd this time. No, I think it's a hybrid. I don't think that's a roach, I think that's a hybrid. You can let me know in the comments below. Do you think, is that a roach or a hybrid that I'm looking at right now? I'm more looking at the colour of the eye and the way the face is shaped. Either way, second fish of the evening, and probably the last one as well, I would say. Fantastic. We might get one more before we lose the light, you never know. In the meantime, let's see if we can get this little guy going away. Well, that just about wraps up the session here for the evening, and what an enjoyable evening on the lake that has been. I've watched the sun go down, I've watched the moon come out, and I've caught 2 fish on a tiny rod that I found wedged in amongst the rocks on the east coast of Scotland last weekend. So I would say that is a fantastic result, and thank you very, very much to anyone who's watching these videos. I love making them, it's a sport that I'm really passionate about, and I love sharing this footage with people. So whether it's just been a bit of entertainment for you, maybe you've learned something, or maybe it's just inspired you to get outdoors, either way, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and until next time, tight lines.